And we are now recording. So welcome to Webex 201 hosting part 1. Today we're going to cover several topics that will assist you in learning how to run a Webex session yourself. Webex 101 covers how to attend and how to control your own audio and video and use chat and things like that. Hosting 201 is going to cover the hosting, the first half of the hosting set of skills that you need to know in order to host an effective Webex. 202 deals more with having other people interact with you and dealing with moderation and allowing others to assist you running meetings and recordings and some other little specific things. 201 is going to cover most of the general information that you need to know in order to host a good Webex meeting. With that said, here are the topics we will cover. Installing the productivity tools and the desktop client. Inviting others to your meeting and scheduling a meeting. We're going to talk about starting a meeting, which is a very simple thing to do. Locking the meeting. We'll cover really briefly how to handle issues that may occur during the meeting, and I've got some more information that came out this morning that I'm going to share with you about that. Handling mute, unmute for all of your people that are in the meeting with you. Raising hands in chats, that's like your Q&A sessions. And of course, the last thing we'll cover is probably the thing everybody wants me to jump straight to, but that's why I put all the other material first, because otherwise you just leave and you really need to know this other stuff, is sharing screens, sharing your screen, sharing files, sharing media, different things like that. So with that said, we're going to start off with our first topic, which is installing the productivity tools and the desktop client. So there's two pieces of software that really make Webex really super effective. You don't have to have them, but I'm going to very strongly recommend that you do. If you're using an LTC computer, installation is fairly simple. Hopefully most of you guys already have them, but the way you do that, let me share a screen here. My participant and chat windows open again. Go. So the way you do that, you guys can probably see my calendar there and a test machine. If you click on your start button, and everybody can do this along with me if you'd like to, type in software, and you'll see the Software Center. And if you're not already familiar with the Software Center, it's an excellent tool. These are all pieces of software that we have already vetted as an IT staff, and we've been through to make sure that these are the correct pieces that you would need. So if you click on Cisco Webex Meetings desktop app, you can install that here. If you click that install, it should run through, shouldn't ask you for a username or a password or anything like that. And then if you go back to applications, you've also got the productivity tools there, which you can just click that install and it should install those for you. So that should be a very, very simple install. The one key to this, make sure your VPN is connected first before you try to run Software Center. Again, this meeting is not really about how to do VPN or Software Center, so we won't go into the details of that, but it is important that you do connect your VPN before you try to use anything in Software Center. So that's how you do it if you are on an LTC laptop from home or an LTC computer at work. The next thing we need to show you how to do is how to install that if you are on your own personal computer. So you need to find those downloads. In order to find those, the first thing you need to do is go to the LTC website. And hopefully everybody can see what I'm presenting here. Underneath quick links is the My LTC Faculty and Staff portal. If you haven't been here, Linda did an amazing job with this. It's got tons of really great specific links right here up top, along with other resources that we continue to add to down here at the bottom. But what we want to focus on is Webex. And again, we'll give additional training on these other items at a later point, but we're going to focus on Webex right now. So if I click that, it's going to pop open here, and it's going to give me a place to download the desktop meetings app. And I'm going to click that download button, and it's going to start that download for me right now. And you can see there's all kinds of good information on this page. Please feel free to look through that. If you click on that link from your cell phone, you've got a link down at the bottom to get the Webex app for your phone as well, because it can do some wonderful things on your phones too. To install this desktop app, I'm just going to click this button. It's going to run. And if you, again, this is for your personal computer. So hopefully you do have administrative rights. You won't get prompted for any sort of a username or password. You're going to see me prompted here. And I am on student side. And that desktop app is going to install. Again, on your personal computer, you either know that username and password or you're logged in with an administrative account, and you won't have to be prompted for that. And in order to get to the productivity tools, you really only need that if you're on an LTC computer, because what the productivity tools is, it's going to give you a button inside Microsoft Outlook Calendar. If you're using your personal machine, you're probably using the web client, and there's no plugin right now that I'm aware of. We're still looking to see. I'm sure there's some other way to do it, but we're not there yet to be able to log in with that on the from the web client. So don't worry about the productivity tools if you're on the web client. If you're on an LTC desktop, install both the desktop and the productivity tools. Once I've installed the client, it's going to ask me to sign in. And actually, I'm going to sign with test it. It's going to take me to a single sign-on prompt, which you guys all should be very, very familiar with. And I will stay signed in, which is fine. And now I have the desktop client installed. And it's going to look like this. If you're in as a guest, you won't have the start a meeting button, but you do have an option to sign in. So if you have installed that, you can sign in. If you've already installed that on your personal machine but haven't signed in yet, please do. You use your email address and same password that you use for everything else. Now, let's talk about scheduling a meeting. Now that you've seen how to install the desktop client, if you're on your personal machine, and the desktop and productivity client if you're on an LTC machine. So I'm going to bring my calendar up. And I have the productivity client installed, and that's going to give me some new items in here. Again, this class does not really go in depth into how to schedule meetings or how to use Microsoft Outlook Calendar or anything like that. But I did want to go ahead and show you guys how this works. If you're used to scheduling meetings, you can hit invite attendees. You know how to do that already. You put in a list of email addresses, be it a student, be it a group of folks. I can put in LTC, Academic Affairs Leadership, and I can send this to all of them, and they're going to get this invitation, something along those lines. In this case, I'm just going to put in test it. The subject will be whatever, obviously, that you want to make that subject. And the location, I like to put in Webex. Again, if you're not familiar with this, this meeting is not going to go in depth in it, but you have recurrence that you can do, and you can set start and end times. You can set how many days of the week that this is going to be on. This is only going to be a Monday, Wednesday from 1 until 2, and it'll show up every Monday, Wednesday, and end on a certain date. If you know the last date that you need to have that meeting, you can use the recurrence feature, which we're not going to do right now. And then here's the part that really ties into WebEx. I'm going to click this little drop down here, and yours may say add WebEx meeting. It may say add personal room. This defaults to the last option that you used. What I'm going to encourage everyone to do, and what our training is really focused on, is going to be adding a personal room. And we'll talk more about that why in just a minute, but I'm going to add a personal room, and you're going to see it communicates the productivity tools with the WebEx servers, and now we're going to have a personal room set up right there. When someone gets this invitation, they can just click that join meeting button, and it's going to take them up, and they'll be able to join that meeting. The biggest thing with WebEx that we talked about in 101 and in all of our other courses as well is that it does not require any sort of username or password. And so that's very, very important. If you're using Blackboard Collaborate, I know it does require people to log in. One thing I like to say in my 201s is that I am not touting WebEx over Blackboard Collaborate or any other tool that might be available to you, but I would encourage you to go ahead and use this, get familiar with it, because it becomes another tool in your toolbox. You know, you go to take off something, a cover plate for a light switch, you need a flathead screwdriver. When you get inside, the flathead screwdriver might work, but a Phillips head might do a better job. So this is another way to have an online meeting. And so that becomes a very effective tool for you if you can determine when and how to employ it. If I wanted to send this, I just hit send and it's going to go out. I don't even need to do anything else. If I want to cancel my room, I can click cancel and this information goes away. So again, it's a very simple process to add those if you have the productivity tools installed. One more time, I want to reemphasize, if you're using a personal computer, Microsoft Outlook is not probably going to be set up. It's not going to be functional for you as a desktop client. You're going to be using the web-based version, and there is no plug-in yet that I've found for that. So I'm not going to save the changes to that. So what do we do if you are on a personal computer and you still need to be able to host a meeting? Let me show you. Let me open up another Google Chrome window. We're going to go to Microsoft Office. And we're going to pull up Outlook. And when you're in Outlook, either on your regular desktop client or on the web version, down here in the lower left, there's a calendar option that's there. And so we can click on that, and it's going to open up our Outlook calendar. And you'll see it's the same items that were on my calendar in my regular desktop version. This is just a web-based client. So if I double-click something here to put in a new meeting, it's going to ask for a title. Test is fine. Again, I've got my invite attendees options that I can do. I'm going to invite test it. Room location, I'm just going to put in, I don't need it to know that. That's fine. I can hit allow. I'm just going to put in Webex. The add online meeting, I'm going to tell you not to use. Skype, we don't really support it all. Teams, Microsoft Teams, we do support, but it does not interact with students properly. That's really only useful if you're going to use Microsoft Teams for meetings, which we have not done training on. We've not shown anybody really how to use. I know John Dunbar is doing an amazing job with his group, and we'll be tapping into some of that knowledge and those things that he's learned to build some best practices and some training for Microsoft Teams. But as of right now, don't use this add online meeting thing unless you have had training from John or one of his folks or from someone else. So how do you then get that information in here? It becomes a question. What do I do? That's where your desktop client comes in. So if you've got that desktop client installed, whether that's on your personal machine or on an LTC machine, you can always find it. You can search for Cisco WebEx meetings. And if you're already logged in, like I should be, it should pop up here in just a second. You're going to note this URL up here. So that's a web page, and I can copy that by clicking this little icon right there. So easy, so easy. Then I can come down here and I can paste that in. And usually what I'll probably do is say, meet in my personal WebEx room. And that way when they click that link, it's the same thing as clicking that join meeting link that we used through the productivity tools when we're using the desktop version. And people will be able to come directly into the personal room just like you guys did today. So that is a very, very simple way. Now, why do we use personal room? And what are these other options that I see? Because there are multiple ways to schedule a WebEx meeting. You've got a schedule option right here. What's going to happen is if you use this, it's not going to use this personal room. It's going to be a specific URL specific to that singular meeting. Problem with that, in my opinion, and this is just strictly my opinion, is if you accidentally schedule that meeting somehow twice and you use it this button the same way, if you use the schedule button, or if you're in the desktop client and you're adding something and you use the WebEx meeting, you're going to note when I add the WebEx meeting this way, it doesn't go to my personal room. So this will come up, by the way, the first time you've used it. You'll have to click OK on that. If I were to save this, you would see the join meeting button didn't go to the same thing as is here. Meet and join can be interchanged. I should tell you that. It doesn't change anything, but it'll have my name, my username at the end of it. And if you don't have that username, that means it's a specific number. So if somehow you accidentally misschedule a meeting, then what can very easily happen is you can have two separate meetings in your calendar that you can't be in both at the same time. So if you're trying to run the meeting, you want to make sure that you only have one meeting. You want to make sure it's easy for folks to get into, and you want to make it less likely that you're going to make a mistake. So what I definitely recommend is using the personal room. It's going to keep it from getting confusing. It can very easily. It's already happened to us several times with people using Webex. Is they've scheduled using the schedule button instead of using their personal room, and it can cause problems. And it's difficult to tell you exactly how that happens because we don't always know. But people usually get in there and create 2 separate calendar entries and end up with 2 separate meetings. Because they'll go into their calendar, they'll schedule a meeting there, and then I need to schedule it here. And they'll schedule it here using the schedule button, which is just going to pop and open an Outlook window, as you can see right here. So let me let that finish communicating, and we are going to not save that. So that covers the portion about scheduling and installing the desktop client. Do you guys have any questions about that? Please feel free to unmute and ask a question or type it into the chat, either way.
Anthony, I wasn't clear on how to get the join button on there. Like that's the only way I've ever went to one is hit join. On my screen, when you hit your personal room, it just had the what you copied.
Okay, so if you come into a meeting and you hit add personal room, it doesn't show you anything like this yet?
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, that's where it pops up. I got you now. I got you.
Yeah, and if you're using the other room, if you're using the Add Webex meeting, it looks a little different. You're going to notice that it doesn't have all the information down there already. It'll do it after you save it. It'll look like the other one. That is something too. But yeah.
Okay, I'm clear. Thank you.
Questions? Yes, sir. Any more questions? Again, feel free to unmute yourself. All righty then. We'll move on to our next topic. And that is how to start a meeting. So what I want to do is I've got this screen right here, and this is inside a test machine. That way I can actually host a meeting, and we're going to have some of our IT folks that are in here with us pump in here, and they're going to jump in here, and they're going to join this meeting with us. And you guys can see exactly what it looks like. So obviously, if you have a scheduled meeting, it's going to give you multiple ways to start that meeting. So you may have a little pop-up that comes down here in your window that says start the meeting. If you end up with multiple different things installed, you can get those in multiple ways. The easiest thing to me, once you've got the desktop client installed, and again, this is another reason that I like to use my personal room, because if I'm not using my personal room, I've got to use the correct button. If I'm using my personal room, it doesn't matter which button. Again, it simplifies things. It keeps things from getting complicated. I can hit start a meeting. Super, super simple. So we're in your preview here. We talked about this in 101. Take a look at what is behind you. Very, very, very important. Make sure that you know exactly what's going on. Check to make sure that everything is functional. So in this case, I can click settings here, and I can see that I've got some audio that's coming through as indicated by the blue bars moving backwards and forward. I can see that. Make sure if I've got multiple speakers, I can check for that. If I've got multiple mics, I can check for that. Multiple webcams, I can check for that to make sure that all those things are working. In this case, I'm using a virtual machine and my camera's already in use. It's not going to pass through. The mic will be shared. So once I get this started, we'll be able to see it. Now, the first thing I like to do, Linda's already jumped in here. The first thing I like to do whenever I'm in a meeting is to come in here and check this underneath participant, mute on entry. And what that's going to do is everybody who joins the meeting is going to automatically be muted. Now, chances are, Linda, go ahead and unmute yourself for me. Chances are, when you do mute on entry, it doesn't force everyone to be muted. So if someone is already in the meeting, let's see, if someone's already in the meeting, like we've got Linda in there right now, I actually have to go in here and say mute all. Sorry about the feedback there, guys. So if somebody's unmuted, I'll be able to check that. Since both of the attendees in this meeting are already muted, I cannot check that. We talked about muting yourself. There's that button. You notice that during the beginning of the meeting, I stayed muted a lot of the time. If you had your participants window open, you would see that. So that's something that you need to be aware of. Now, let's say you've got your meeting going. What do you do next? Again, I like to bring up my participants and my chat. The desktop client allows you to have both open at the same time. I can maximize this window to make it as large as I need it to be, and that way I've got all my chat options, and I can see if somebody is chatting to me. And if I've got this participants thing, I can scroll down through it. We've only got 3 folks in here, but I can scroll all the way up and down through there. Now, if you don't have it open, I think Linda may be typing something to us right now. You'll be able to tell that there is something there. There you go. Linda has given us a chat message there. And you can also see after that fades, there's a little red dot, and that tells us we have an unread chat message. And that should be there for you as well if you were in this meeting. Oh, David, you are one funny one, aren't you? Same thing with participants. If the participants are not visible, if you've got that turned off, if somebody new were to join the meeting, you would see that little red dot. Something that we didn't get a chance to show you guys in some of these other things is the different views that are available. Active speaker window. You notice now that I have nothing down here at the bottom. I have no thumbnails. If I go to active speaker and thumbnail view, which is what everything defaults to, I can see both the thumbnails down here. Of course, Linda's in the big picture and David is in the small one. If I had multiple people, they'd be out here. Even if they're not showing video, they'll still show up with their initials. And the other option is the grid view, which this is really super handy if you're, now this is only your view. This does not affect everyone else, but it's really super handy if you're conducting a meeting and you want to be able to see everybody and you're not sharing your screen. So this works extremely well if you're not sharing your screen. Once you start sharing, grid view is not really very useful. So I'm going to go back to the default here. Now, if you do have someone that is being a bit rowdy, we need to teach you how to handle that. And sometimes that's on purpose. Sometimes they're causing problems on purpose and sometimes not. There's actually an article that was sent out today from TCSG. They called it Zoom busting, I think is what it was called. Folks getting into a Zoom meeting, and this can be done in Webex or any sort of other online platform, and they use a profane name, or they start typing things that are in profane, or they start playing profane audio or sharing profane video or things like that. And so you, as the host of the meeting, really need to know. David says, don't use Zoom. Well, they can do it in Webex too. So how do we handle that? If someone, and it could be feedback. It could be somebody has a noisy mic, or they live next to an airport and they didn't mute themselves. So how do we handle that? Let's talk first about the TCSG doc. I will find that, Dave, and get that to you guys after the meeting. Well, actually, I can find it right now. Well, just a second. Let's see if I can find that for you. It's just a link to some articles. My email's going to be very slow to react right now, of course. But once I find this article, I'll post a link to you. It shouldn't take me more than just another minute or two. Too many emails. There it is. So here are the articles, guys. I'm putting them in the chat for you. And there are 3 separate articles there, one at the New York Times, one at ZDNet, and another one on a blog by Actual Zoom, the company. You guys can take a look at those on your own. You can feel free to save the chat from this meeting when you exit the meeting, and you'll have access to all those articles. So now, once we know that we've got a problem, whether it's on purpose or not, what do we do? What I like to do is kick the person out and don't let them back in if they're causing problems on purpose. And so let's cover how to do that first. If somebody's causing problems and they're doing it on purpose, the first thing I'm going to do, all right, David, I see you down there. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lock my meeting. So I click on lock meeting, and now the meeting is locked, and no one can get into the meeting unless I actually add them in. Once the meeting is locked, if somebody attempts to join, I'll get a little pop-up. I saw that this morning. That's going to ask me to admit this person. You don't have to. So if you know they were causing you problems, you do not have to let them back into the meeting. But if there are others that you know should be coming into the meeting, you can let them in. So David, I'm going to kick you out. So if David were the one causing the problem, I could expel him. And now David is gone. And now the meeting is locked, and hopefully David will rejoin, attempt to rejoin. If not, I can get him to chat for it real quick. I want you guys to see this because we haven't covered this in our other 201s. This was something new that we discovered. We're learning too, just like you guys are. Let me make sure I get this. Real quick. My computer is really slow this morning, guys. I apologize. Almost there. Okay, so I've asked him to join us again. Hopefully he will be able to, and we'll get to see this where it asks us to let him into the meeting. So now, while we're waiting on that, let me get my schedule back open here. We know how to lock it, we know how to expel it. Now, there we go, very good. Dave McMurray is waiting in the lobby. Do we want to let him in or not? And again, we have this option. Remember, because this does not require a username and a password, if you're having people from outside the college come in or students come in or anything like that, they can change their name. So they could say it was somebody else right here. So this may or may not be David. So I have to let them back in or not. In this case, I'm going to. I'm going to click admit. And now David's back in our meeting. And he is automatically muted because I have mute on entry checked. Now, if David starts to make more problems, I can kick him back out again. However, if maybe somebody just has a mic issue and they left their mic open, we don't really need to kick them out of the meeting. We just need to stop that crazy feedback that's coming through. So if David's unmuted and David's talking, how do I figure out who's the one causing the problem? If you look right here, where I move my mouse away, you'll be able to see the sound waves that are coming out there. Next, well, David's got there, both of us now. So you can see both of us are creating sound within the meeting. And that's what, as a host, that's how you can tell that, David says, please don't kick me, I'll play nice now. But that's how you can tell that you have sounds coming through. And so you as a host can scroll through your list. And if you have, like right now we have 26 folks online, it's very difficult to see all of them at one time. So I have to scroll all the way down through and look to see, okay, who doesn't have that little red icon that's there to say that they're sending stuff. And if they're unmuted and they're not sending anything, like David, be very still for just a moment. And you're going to notice I'm still talking as test, but David is not sending anything. As soon as he starts typing, you should, yep, there we go. You see those little sound waves coming through. So you know that that sound is coming coming from his machine. Thank you, sir, for the noise. And let's mute David again. I don't want him making noise in here anymore. As we talked about in 101, chat is a very simple thing to do with an individual. I can click here and it will, I'll be sending to David Murray alone, or I can go back to everyone. Something to note, and as we cover this in 101 very briefly, make sure that you know who you're sending to. More than once in a meeting, I personally have sent something separately to an individual in the meeting and then kept typing and thought I was talking to everybody, and I was just talking to that one person and nobody heard what I was typing. Nobody was able to read what I was typing. So keep that in mind. Pay attention to what you're doing and what is selected if you're going to chat. So our meeting is locked, and you guys can see again that David had to be admitted to the meeting, and so we've covered that topic. We've talked about handling audio and feedback with mute and unmute. As a host, one of the biggest things that can happen is you, especially in small meetings, if you have 10 or 15 people, is somebody needs to ask a question. Normally those questions you're going to want to wait for a Q&A period, unless it's a very small group of people, just 5 or 6, because it's much too difficult for them to typically unmute themselves and work. That can be a challenge. 2 or 3 people unmute themselves at the same time and start talking, and it's just a lot of sound and nobody can really understand anything. So what you can do is you can use the raise the hand feature. That is only available in the desktop client, though. We need to make that very clear. So if you have a student and they are not using the like the iPhone app or the Android app or the desktop client from Webex themselves, they will not have that raise the hand feature. So we talked about this really briefly in 101, but you can see both of these guys are raising their hands. They're asking to speak, and so I said, okay, we're in Q&A now. David, if you would please go ahead and speak. Ask your question. I've got to come up with something on the spot. Just say why.
Why?
There you go. Excellent question, David. Thank you very much. Now you'll notice I'm going to immediately mute him back once he's asked his question. This is just simple host protocol. You as the host want to make sure that people ask their questions and then you mute them again. Now, if you're having a discussion with the person, obviously during the question and answer, then you're going to want to leave them unmuted. So if I unmute David and David asks a question.
Is password a good password?
And see, now, David, password is a very bad term in and of itself. And then David may want to say something back. So we may be having a conversation back and forth, and I may want to leave him unmuted. But once he is done with his question asking portion, and I feel like he's not going to have any feedback, I'm going to want to mute him. So that is a very handy thing. So we've covered mute, unmute. We've covered raising of hands. We've covered chats. So you guys know how to interact with everybody that's in the meeting. And let me ask now, do we have any questions? If you do, you can either raise your hand. This group has been quiet enough. You can probably unmute yourself and start talking without having to raise your hand. Or you can type those questions into the chat. And again, I'm scrolling through. Okay, Dave, we've got a question. Go ahead.
Thank you. Sent out the information about removing people from a meeting. Is there a policy regarding this with students? This strikes me as a little bit dangerous. Kind of what we all think is the right thing to do.
Well, in my mind, this falls underneath the same thing you would do if they were in a classroom. So if a student walks into a classroom and they are, whatever policy you follow in the classroom, treat this as the same thing would be my vote. We may need to talk to Nancy to get some, or Donna to get some clarification there as to what those correct actions might be. So I will run this by them. Thank you for that question. And let me make a quick note here.
Thank you.
Be able to do that. But honestly, I would think the same policies that apply in the classroom apply online. I try not to treat online differently, and this is just my personal philosophy. If I wouldn't say it to a person, I'm not going to type it. If I wouldn't, take this picture and show it, then I'm not going to post it, kind of thing. So there's, if you treat your online activities in the same way you treat your real life activities, you typically won't run into any issues. Again, by following policy or anything like that. All right, now we'll move on to our next topic, which is our final topic for this meeting, which is sharing screens, files, and media. So I'm going to start off over here, and I'm going to share a screen here in just a second, but I want you to see that there are multiple ways you can share information in a WebEx. So I have an option to share a screen, and if you notice this orange border, I'm pointing to it like you can see my fingers easily. There's an orange border around the outside of the window here. That's going to share that entire monitor. If I click on one of these other ones, it's only going to share those specific applications. In this case, I'm going to try to share, let me open up actually Word. So if I open up Microsoft Word, oh, it's not on this machine. This is a brand new machine. I haven't even installed Office on it yet. So test, and I've got Word open, and I flip back over to my Cisco WebEx meeting. And now I've got WordPad open there, and if I share that, here it is. So in addition to paying attention to your background for your camera, when you go to share your screen, paying attention to what's on your screen is also vitally important, because everything that's there or could be there could possibly be seen depending on how you share it. In this case, what I did is share a specific application. That can work really, really well, or that can cause problems. if you're going to share a specific application, ask your end users if they can see everything okay. I have seen multiple times, especially with a Word document or an Excel document, you may have a big gray box that sits up in the middle of the screen. We thought, well, maybe that was some sort of a pop-up, some sort of a notification or something like that. And I've made sure I had everything else closed out and it still was there. So honestly, I can't tell you what causes that, and it doesn't happen all the time. The other thing is when this window is open and they're seeing it, this takes up their entire screen. So what I'm sharing with you guys is taking up your entire shared screen inside your window there. If I share this with them, with these two guys, with Dave and Linda, they are actually going to see this large, unless I have it maximized. If I maximize it here, they're going to see that in a large screen. So keep that in mind. The first thing that I do after I've shared, of course, is ask them if they can see everything okay. The second thing that I do is, oh my goodness, where did all of my icons go? I don't have any icons down here anymore, so I can't control the meeting. What do? You see this orange up top? Go there, all your menu comes back. I always go immediately in and reopen my chat and reopen my participants. Now, one of the cool things about this, since I'm now sharing, these things are mobile. So if you've got two monitors, you can drag and move them over onto a second monitor. You can drag the picture-in-picture over onto a second monitor. You can make them bigger. You can make them smaller. So that's really nice when you're, David says, as students, we don't see controls. That's right. You don't have to worry about them as the participant. But if you're the host, you'll still need to know where all of your controls are. We'll go over some of these more in detail in part 2 and in the advanced class. So we'll talk more about that later. When I want to stop sharing, it's a very simple process. I click stop. And now, see, we've just got a request from Yolanda to annotate, which I'm going to decline right now, Yolanda. We will cover that in our advanced class, and you guys can have fun and play around a little bit. But so we have covered now the really basic thing about sharing an application, or let me show you what it looks like to share screen. Notice I have a green bar, a bright green bar going around the outside, and it's going to tell me that I'm sharing my screen. So again, now they can see everything, not just what's inside this window here, but they're seeing desktop icons, they're seeing this. If a notification pops up down here for email, they're seeing that. So keep that in mind. Again, whatever is on, if you're sharing a screen, whatever comes on that screen, your attendees will actually see. So be very careful with that as far as privacy goes. The next piece we're going to cover really quickly is sharing a file. So let me save this Word document real quick. And I can share that as a file instead of an application. Now the difference here is I can't go in here and type. If I was sharing the application or sharing my screen and I open the application, I would be able to type in that. With this, it's like a fixed version and it can't be typed into. And we'll talk more about annotations in, again, future sessions, but I do want to give you a quick look here. I can open up my annotations and I should be able to pick a pen. And now I can make marks on this screen. Others within the meeting can also do annotations on this. And I'll tell you the other thing here, and for you guys that have been in, I think Dave, I know Dave has been in multiple sessions. When we first opened up a thing like this, or we opened up Whiteboard, which I'll show you looks basically the same. I was like, well, how do I get out of this? I don't want to close out my entire meeting. I don't believe, David, that we can block somebody from sharing content. David McMurray just asked the question whether or not we can block someone from sharing. That doesn't seem to be the case. You can't disable that, but what you can do, or at least I haven't figured out how yet, there may be a way. If there is, we'll cover that in the advanced topic. Most of the time, the easiest way to handle that is users aren't going to share or try to annotate or anything like that. Most of the time, they're there to attend and to watch. If you have somebody that's doing that, tell them to stop. If they don't stop, you kick them out of the meeting. Because in the end, that's being disruptive and preventing the meeting from moving forward. So once I have shared a file, and again, there are very limited reasons you're going to need to do this. Most of the time, you'll open the file and share your screen. But if I've shared the file itself, I can click on, this is my report on frogs. So David has just shared that file right now, or Linda has, sorry. Very good. So yes, she's got this report. We can scroll through. Now, we'll cover this more in 202, but since Linda has just shared this, I cannot close it out. But what I can do, this is called grabbing the ball or passing the ball. I can take that little Webex ball, drop it back on me. And I am now the presenter, and now I can close out that. Now, see, David has grabbed the ball. They're going to test me here a little bit, I think. We're really going to cover this. I can close this out. Yes, close it. No, don't save. Yes, close it. That was yes to save. I have to read what's in the dialogue. Do I want to save it? No. And so I had to grab that ball back. And again, that can be an issue in a meeting since they can grab things and take over. You would have to go in and move that over. Before we do the advanced this afternoon, we're going to do some testing and make sure that there is a way, hopefully there is a way you can disable that. And again, we'll cover that in advance. Thank you guys for giving us that little tidbit there. The last thing I'm going to do is show you how what I would recommend if you wanted to share like a video of something. So if I open up Chrome and I go to YouTube, and again, the thing that I'm going to recommend here is this is a virtual desktop, so it's not really meant to play full real-time videos here, but we're going to click this so you guys can see. But you want to do your own testing for this, but I think it should work just fine. I'm going to skip ad.
This is the 2020 Chevy Corvette, and it is quite simply
so
the hottest.
The question I want to ask is, we've just done an upgrade to our virtual desktop system. I know, Dave, we talked earlier in an earlier 201 session about whether or not there was an audio lag, video audio dissociation. Can you tell me, Dave, I'm going to unmute you real quick. When I was playing that video, were the lips synced up with the words fairly well for you?
Behind one of the things that I read this morning too is that you reduced its video streaming quality because of the demand worldwide. Part of that will cause the audio, what's called a MUX line, not to be in sync. So given the fact that we're streaming through so many servers and all that, the expectation is probably going to be pretty high that you're going to be anywhere from an eighth or a half a second behind. I ran into that last night, and I think that lag's going to be an issue, and that will be direct proportional to the quality of the video. So expect a little bit of lag.
So that's coming from an instructor that's already doing this. So Dave has good experience. Now I can tell you on my end as the host of that meeting, of course, I didn't see any lag. What I'm curious is whether or not Dave, do you and Linda see this? Is it in sync for you, or is there a disassociation? Is the lag, the mouth not matching the words?
I'm going to start with a little background. The Corvette first came out in the 1950s, and it's been a constant in the American.
So you guys want to tell us in the chat down here if it's lip synced properly?
The last few Corvette models have been great, but they've generally been an evolution around a fairly similar theme.
I don't know if you guys could hear me. David, Linda, was this lip synced up properly? Gotcha, John. Thank you for that. And that lag, again, I'm not showing you guys a video on my machine. I'm showing you a video on a school machine at Gainesville, which is 40 miles away, on a virtual system that's never meant to play videos. So what you're seeing there is not typical of what you would do as normally as a host. That's why I was hoping that David or Linda could tell me. I don't know if maybe they are not able to hear me or not. That's very, very true, Linda. It does depend on the student's internet. If they have issues on their end, whether it's at their home or their computer speed or the provider that they are using, that can also cause all kinds of things. Dave, yes, please ask a question or statement.
One of the things that playback on my platform was different than how students were seeing things. That goes back to exactly what you were talking about, is the delays through the different um, Wi-Fi streaming systems, the different providers and all that. So you can't assume that what you are seeing is exactly what your students are seeing. It's close, but students told me several times last night that I was breaking up on my platform. It looked like it was completely seamless. So just unaware.
Very good. Thank you, Dave. So with that, I will open up to questions. If you guys have any questions on this, again, let me tell you again real quick. In 202, we're going to cover several more things, especially how you do moderation with someone else assisting, how you do recording and things like that. And then our advanced, we're going to deal with annotations and whiteboards and closed captioning and all kinds of different things in there. So any questions, guys can either, we have a very quiet group. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, or if you prefer, raise your hand. I'll be fine either way. Not seeing any hands raised. No one's unmuting.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Georgia. If I'm just wanting to proctor, which isn't that where you're like watching testers and stuff?
Yes.
Would I need a lot of these capabilities anyway?
No, ma'am. And we will be doing, assuming the need arises, we've got our list of folks that have volunteered, and we will be doing some proctoring specific training, because that will be a little bit different. That'll be a one-on-one meeting typically that you're going to be doing, or maybe one with 3 or 4 students at the most. Because if you do have that, you can use that grid view that I showed you earlier, and you can have those large on your screen, but you can't get more than about 4 people on there before it gets too small to really see details well enough to be able to handle that. So we will be getting specific training for that, because you're going to have all kinds of other things that you're going to need to be able to take into consideration for that.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions?
Anthony,
Yes.
this is Fran Thomas. Where I could, for instance, work a math problem and show the student. Does it have that capability?
Yes, you could do that. You may want to, instead of using the whiteboard, you may want to use Microsoft Word and the math annotations that are available in Microsoft Word. Again, that'll be strictly based on what you guys would prefer. But I would encourage you to attend. Well, play with it yourself, obviously. I think that's one of the things John Dunbar said. The best way to do this is to get comfortable with it by asking somebody to pair off with you. And we're going to talk about that in our advanced meeting. We're going to do, there are 70 people. This is going to be really interesting. We're going to talk about and actually practice passing the ball back and forth. I'm going to recruit some different folks to actually manage the audio in the meeting, and have some people raise their hands. We're going to do some real life demonstrations with moving around who is the host and who is the presenter, and working with the whiteboards. And so that meeting is going to be a lot more hands-on training with that. And then I'm going to encourage you to pick a partner when we finish our session, and to actually go into practice that. So yes, absolutely. Any more questions, guys? I'm trying to look through and see if there are any hands raised. Don't see any. Do have a question here from Teresa. As a host, can you remove a participant's video as well as muting the participant? No, you cannot remove the video. So that is something you do need to be aware of. And if most of the time that's going to be something that you're going to have to rely on, if you have a large group, a moderator to tell you that someone has something offensive, unless they're making a lot of noise and making that video come to your attention. Because as you saw, the thumbnails across the bottom only have a limited number. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on my monitor right now. And there are 25 folks in this meeting. So I won't see what a lot of you guys have on your video at any given point in time. But you cannot mute their video, no, just their audio. I wish you could, but you cannot, not that I'm aware of. Oh, David McMurray said, if we wanted to block sharing content, well, my goodness, so simple. Haven't even looked for that before. This is new for this one session. Anyone can share. Now, not everyone can share. So that's a very easy way to prevent folks from sharing their screen. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. Again, we're learning too, guys, so bear with us. One thing I will note as we start to move forward with this and we finish out the training sessions that we have scheduled, after we've really, truly, fully developed the material, I'm going to go back and record 1 to 3, 4 minute segments on that are very topical. So for 201, there'll be a very short 1 to 3 minute video on installing the productivity tools in desktop. There'll be a 1 to 3 minute video on scheduling, and another video on starting and what you do to start up the meeting and what I consider to be best practices. And there'll be another one on how do you handle troublemakers, whether it's on purpose or not, like we talked about. And then another, 3 to 4 minute video on sharing and the different options that are available within sharing. And we'll have a video on sharing applications, on sharing screens. There'll be a general sharing on which ones you may want to watch, things like that. So we will be giving very short topical things, and I'll record those separately without an audience for the most part. We'll have a few people in there just for the effect so we can actually show you what's happening. But once at that point, the material will be fully developed and we'll know everything we need, and we can really pull together some even more better training for you guys, so you can go back and, I don't want to watch a 45-minute video to figure out how to do this one thing. I can find my specific topic and just watch that 1 minute video. All right, any more questions, guys? Okie dokie. Yes, Webex does have some very good tutorials. It does. I want to make sure that we do ours specific to linear tech. And if there's a generalized page that links to all those tutorials, I'll probably link over to that as well. All right, if there are no more questions, I'm going to consider our session ended and stop the recording now.